For the first half of 2022, we've had a couple pretty good successes, but we've also had a couple good failures. So it's the beginning of July and the year's basically half over. I mean, the kids are already counting down to Christmas. We thought we would take today to really kind of share with you some of our successes and failures on the farm so far this year. There's been a couple really good ones and a couple not so good ones. So let's get started.
So we're going to start with a success, or what we feel was a pretty good success for 2022. Lettuce. We had our best lettuce year ever, as you can see from this red romaine lettuce, which is sort of going a little wild here. We managed to grow a lot of lettuce. And this is kind of a timely one because even though we will plant more lettuce for sort of the fall period and the fall harvest, we're really getting to the end of the spring lettuce harvest. Because as you can see on this prize head lettuce that we actually are letting go to collect some more seed, they're trying to bolt. So our lettuce growing season is kind of coming to an end for the spring. We also had some good experiments with obviously lettuce that we planted ourselves, but also lettuce that overwintered. And we had a ton of volunteers, which was a really neat experiment, and they basically grew really, really well. So not only was it a success in the amount of lettuce that we've grown and harvested, but we learned some more things about growing lettuce that we kind of haven't experienced in the past.
So here is a big fail. We really wanted to finish our raised beds this year and have a few more trellises and build the rest of our L raised garden. And as Chris is going to pan over here in 1 second, you're going to see just how badly we failed at getting that done. This is overgrown with wild parsnip, burdock, stinging nettles, about everything you could imagine, and no raised bed.
That being said, even though this is a disappointment for the first half of the year, the plan is still to get this finished sometime either late this summer or early fall, so that come the 2023 season, we have a raised bed and more trellis space here. As I stand in front of this carpet of green behind me, I think one of our big successes for the spring growing season was the brassicas. All of them did amazing, and I will take you in here to show you these purple top turnips as a good example. Although we haven't actually harvested any of the main brassica crops yet, as you can see, the size of this turnip here, they've done amazing. I think that is one of the nicest looking turnips we've ever grown.
We should enter that in a fair.
But it's not just turnips. Our cabbages, again, although they are not quite ready for harvest just yet, so we may be jumping the gun a little bit. But as you can see,
they actually have heads on them.
They do, and although there is a little bit of cabbage white damage, knock on wood, for the most part, we really haven't had any infestations this year, which has been awesome. Of course, I think one of the star players here has to be the red Russian kale, which, if some of you will remember, just seeded itself like no tomorrow. This entire row was transplanted from our raised beds, and it's done amazing. But on top of that, our kohlrabi are looking amazing too. They're not quite ready for harvest, but the same story as the cabbage. They don't have very much, knock on wood, cabbage white damage, so it's been a really good growing season for brassica.
So in my mind, I seem to be doing the failures in this video, but in my mind, our biggest failure this year is not milking the sheep. And really, it was a decision that we made. We just were not ready. We got overwhelmed in planting season, and it just kind of all piled on top of each other, and we weren't set up. We didn't have a stand made. We didn't have a chute to run them through. There was just a whole bunch of things there that we just said, you know what, it's not happening this year. It was a decision, and in all fairness, we still have the sheep. So next year, we're just going to be organized and try again. I know we've said that about the raised beds as well. But that is the plan, to be organized to milk the sheep next year. But on an absolute plus note, these sheep are in amazing condition this year. We've never had such big lambs so quick. I mean, we're just approaching, what did I say, 9 weeks for most, 10 weeks maybe for most of the babies, and they're huge. So this has been a great lambing year, and we had success with that. So next year, stay tuned, because we are going to milk the sheep. It is my turn to do a plus. We have had great success with the rabbits this year. We've tried some new methods, not necessarily methods that we've never done before, but we've adopted the tractoring around the yard, which has saved us a lot of money on pellets, which is, again, a plus. So we've had more baby rabbits born this year, I think, than any year since we started doing rabbits. I'm looking at Chris behind you for confirmation from that. We'll write down on the bottom how many rabbits we've had born so far in the first half of 2022, and we're hoping for a good fall breeding season too, but you'll have to watch the space to find out on that. But
well, as we're filming this today, yesterday and today, we have a few litters arriving.
Yes, we have 4 does that are due today. The first one kindled yesterday and had at least 6 or 7. She's a bit of an iffy mom, so I haven't actually bugged her, but I kind of reached in there and I could definitely feel 6. I have a feeling that she had 7, which is fantastic because that's her second litter of 7 this spring. So stay tuned to see how well we do on the bunnies.
Well, the next one, I guess, is kind of a negative. It's not a complete failure, but we were later than we would have liked to be on planting some of the garden, as you can see from behind me. Now, I think, like the sheep milking, this has a bit of an offset, because the positive is what we have gotten in early, as you saw with the brassicas, has done amazing. But we haven't got everything in at the time when we would have liked to. I guess that's the best way to put it. So this one, I think we're going to have to stay tuned and see how that may affect our end of year harvest. It'll be interesting to see.
Tell them the part you're most worried about.
Well, I think the squash is a big one.
He said it, guys. He said squash.
And between the cucumber beetles and getting stuff planted a little bit late, it just doesn't seem to be a good squash year. But I'm not going to use that as an excuse if we don't end up with much in the way of squash by the end of the summer. So stay tuned for that.
Tell us, do you still feel that squash can save the world if it's such a volatile crop?
Yes, I do, because I think the lesson there is, in a given year, not everything works well. So last year we had a pretty dismal year on things like cabbages and some of the other brassicas, especially in the early part of the year. Our fall harvest was better, but this year, I'm going to say the weather has cooperated, and that side of our garden is doing amazing. The squash are suffering a little bit. So I think no matter what endeavor you do, that's why you don't put all your eggs in one basket, for lack of a better way to put it. Another failure we had that we really didn't touch on was chickpeas. We'd planted a fairly large patch and given it the customary 21 days to sprout. And despite having what I would have said would have been a good year for it, it didn't do anything. So last year we planted chickpeas in this garden, right about this space, and they grew. They didn't really produce anything. This chickpea failure, which I have nothing to show you because they didn't do anything, is going to be an interesting one because we're going to apply sort of the 3 strikes you're out rule. So last year was a little bit of our error, but it was interesting because even though they flowered, they didn't produce anything. There was nothing in the pods. The pods were empty. This year, nothing came up. We're going to try next year to start them ahead of time, as per some recommendations, and see what happens. But chickpeas might be the failure that could be on the chopping block. A lot of the other things we've talked about as far as failures are definitely not on the chopping block. There's a multitude of factors that have affected it. But this is the one that we were quite excited about because chickpea plants, the bushes, can produce a lot, or apparently can produce a lot of food. But we're just not having a lot of luck with it. So we're going to chalk that up to 3 strikes you're out, and we're on strike 2. So as we wrap this video up of sort of successes and failures for the first half of 2022, I'm going to take you down here to something that I think we both feel has been an amazing success. And that is our black elderberry clones. So as you can see from this particular one, they're doing amazing. I have 4, basically they were pots. Each pot had 2 cuttings in them that we've already planted out. And we have at least 4 more pots. I can't remember exactly. 6 more pots. And we have at least 6 more pots left to go out. So this is a really big success in my books so far, because it was exactly as everybody advertises. Super, super simple. And as I say, look at the size of this clone already. I should have videoed when I transplanted them, because the root ball that each of these 4 bigger sets of clones had was just amazing, considering that these aren't very old. These were taken the end of March, right before we thought we were too late. So this is a great success, because
we wanted lots of them.
Exactly. So hopefully, ending on this note, you enjoy this video. This is just kind of a little snapshot of some discussion on some things that have gone extremely well, and some things that didn't go exactly as planned, which realistically always happens on Homestead.
And don't forget to subscribe so you can see how our year end goes.